for more on the lead up to the election. I'm joined live by Tom Howe, who is a researcher at Monash University and looks at British politics. Tom, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. As we heard in that package a little bit earlier, the polls are indicating a big defeat for Rishi Sunak. But can you tell us just how big of a swing are we looking at?
So I think that there's quite a big range, as you mentioned, and I think the most that the Labour Party have been projected to win is around 516 seats, and the lowest projection has been around 406. So I would imagine it will be somewhere within that range, but personally, I would probably put it towards the bottom end of that range. But that would depend on a number of factors, how the vote splits on the right, for instance, how much tactical voting there is on the centre and on the left, and all these factors will impact the seat tally in the end.
And just how significant is that? When was the last time we saw something like this happen?
This election is quite unprecedented in terms of the swing going from the Conservative to the Labour Party. So as recently as 2021, people were talking about a decade of Tory rule under Boris Johnson, and so you see the reversal of fortunes has occurred so quickly there, and particularly so. In 2019, the Labour Party suffered what's been described by many as one of their worst defeats in their history, and so the reversal up to this point is really quite astonishing.
And just recently, we saw the last leaders debate the other day between Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer. The polls after it suggested that it was a tie. What impact, if any, do you think these debates have on voters?
I don't think the debates have much impact at all. So I think the first debate was watched by around 4.8 million viewers. That's around 2 million people fewer than watched a similar debate in 2019, and way down from the 10 million who watched the first TV debate in 2010. And so, I don't really think the debates matter at all, because a lot of people have already made up their mind that they won't vote for the Conservative Party. And so I think it would be quite unusual for the debate to tip the scale in that regard. The example in the US is probably a good example where a debate can tip the scale and impact the election. But in the UK's case, I don't expect the debates to have any impact at all.
Looking at Nigel Farage and the Reform UK party, Reform UK, we're just hearing that they've withdrawn its support for 3 of its general election candidates over alleged racist or anti-migrant comments. Is this likely to alter the outcome at all for Reform or have any impact?
I think it may have some impact. I don't think so. The last scandal with Reform involved Nigel Farage's comments on Ukraine, and that didn't really have much impact on the polls at all. And a lot of the voters that Reform are targeting are older voters, and these would be voters who would be more likely to vote by post anyway. And so in that case, a lot of these people will have already voted. For the people who will vote in person, perhaps it will have some impact, but I think it speaks to the kind of divisive nature of Reform's politics, and someone like Nigel Farage really being a kind of a Vegemite figure, so people either love him or hate him, and I think that really puts a bit of a ceiling on the support that Reform might expect to get.
Yeah, and just what threat does Farage and Reform pose to the Conservative Party?
So the biggest problem for the Conservative Party is that Reform will split their vote. So in 2019, Reform didn't run against any Conservative candidates, and that really helped the Tories. It meant that there was one party to vote for on the right, really. Whereas in this election, clearly that vote can be split. And in marginal seats, that makes it easier for challengers in the centre and in the left wing of politics to come through and take the seat. So that does present a problem. And then after the election, that it will really depend on how well Reform do, how many seats they get, and particularly where Nigel Farage ends up.
And just finally, we've heard quite a bit about the Tories betting scandal. What impact has that had on the Tories, and what have you heard in terms of Rishi Sunak's response to that?
So it's definitely cut through. It's along with the D-Day incident. So Sunak left the beaches in Normandy early to pre-record a television interview. This is the second most impactful gaffe of the campaign. So it's definitely cut through. But I think it's worth emphasising that it's really the latest in a long line of allegations of sleaze, cronyism, corruption. So, Johnson's downfall was ultimately precipitated by the Partygate scandal. You've had PPE scandals, cash for honours. So typically, I think Conservative Party donors who've donated around £3 million, weirdly end up in the House of Lords as lords or baronesses, which is a bit of a coincidence. But there's a real air of corruption around the party, and this is kind of a final nail in the coffin. Sunak's obviously come out and railed against the issue, but it was a little bit too late, to be honest. They waited for an independent investigation, but I mean, Sunak was the one who decided when the election would be held, and presumably he knew the people he would have told, so it looked like indecision and weakness on his part again.
It's certainly going to be an interesting week as we watch that and they head to the polls, of course, at the end of the week. Tom, thank you so much for your analysis this afternoon.
Thank you.